Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning and welcome to PodUp with Matthews in the Morning, coming to you from the International Diamond Center Studios. Fine jewelry, watches, and much more. Family owned and operated with the largest selection of natural diamond jewelry. You go by there, folks, between now and Valentine's, they'll hook you up just for browsing and looking. Spurrier's Gridiron Grill gift cards, pretty good deal. It's a Thursday edition. You know what that means. We'll have our college football and Heisman Trophy voter, Brent Beaird, and then we'll have Graham Hall from 24/7 Sports. Just get some updates on recruiting, portal, Gator football, changes, if any, are going to happen, and obviously we'll talk a little hoops as well. Let's go to the Titan More Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. It's our man, Brent Beaird. Good morning, Brent. How you doing, bud?
Well, it's chilly over here in Clay County, but we are it's still a nice day because we've got college football tonight, and we had hoops the last two nights. So it is still a wonderful time of year where both sports kind of go together.
Yeah, there's no question about that, Brent. Let's jump right into it. Preseason magazines. You're telling me here, Phil Steele takes no days off. He's already working.
Oh, look, Phil Steele basically has been working for several months, frankly. So he put out a tweet that he started on the magazine in late November, by the way, Shane. And he has three write-throughs, and he is doing the first one right now. Bottom line, 150 days when the magazine goes to press.
Wow. And there's some pretty good games week one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this came out this week, too. Alabama, Florida State in Tallahassee, Auburn at Baylor, Georgia Tech at Colorado, LSU at Clemson. That will be probably the headliner. Nebraska and Cincinnati from Kansas City. Notre Dame goes to Miami. Be interesting to see if they're used to that heat. South Carolina, how about this, versus Virginia Tech, and Atlanta and Syracuse versus Tennessee and Atlanta. I'm guessing, Shane, that's probably the Chick-fil-A Classic doubleheader. We'll know more on that later. TCU at North Carolina, Texas at Ohio State. Yes, that's the opener, and that they are playing tomorrow, and they open the season next year. And Utah at UCLA. That's not a bad opening week, is it?
Not at all. Not at all. As you mentioned, Brent, earlier tonight, we get one of the semifinal games, the Orange Bowl, Notre Dame, Penn State tonight at 7:30. Your thoughts on this game? Who you like?
Notre Dame, but not by much. Notre Dame is among the nation leaders in turnover margin. They've got plus 18. Penn State is plus 10. Notre Dame safety Xavier Watts has 6 interceptions and a fumble recovery. Penn State can certainly run the ball with Keyshawn Allen and Nick Singleton. We don't know how much Abdul Carter is going to play. The Penn State tremendous defensive player. He has 21 tackles for loss. Riley Leonard, pretty good touchdown to interception ratio, 18-6. And we will see probably the second best tight end of the country in Tyler Warren of Penn State. That will be coming up. Harold Fanning is considered the best tight end. So, I mean, this, Shane, would surprise you at all if this thing's played in a phone booth and it's 21-17 or something like that.
Yeah, to me, these two teams are carbon copies of one another.
Yep.
What do you think about the game tomorrow night, Ohio State, Texas? We all know that it'll be a heavy Longhorn crowd there at Jerry's World, but boy, Ohio State's playing best football of the year.
Yeah, they're going to have they'll be fine once they get in the stadium. The problem is on the way over there, it's probably going to be snowing. They may have some ice. The weather is going to be terrible. Fortunately, they won't have to worry about that inside the stadium. I mean, Ohio State's playing so well right now. They figured out after the Michigan game, we need to get the ball to our wide receivers, especially Jeremiah Smith. And they're very good defensively, too. They had 8 sacks against Oregon. They've got the number 5 rush defense, Ohio State does. And now Texas is certainly capable of winning this game, but they're up and down. Need to be able to run the ball. Quinn Weisner, their running back's really good. Arch Manning, we don't know if he's going to play or not. Quinn Ewers, in his last game, made some incredible passes, 66 touchdowns and 23 interceptions in 3 seasons. And Texas has got some good defensive players. They're ranked defensively as well as, or even better than Ohio State. Colin Simmons is impressive. Only 2 teams that put up only over 350 yards against Texas. That's Arizona State and Clemson. I mean, being an SEC homer, I hope Texas wins, Shane, but Ohio State's playing so well, it's hard to go against them.
Yeah, and I totally forgot about this. Quinn Ewers is from that area.
He is.
And people don't forget, he was one of the first guys to get an NIL deal.
That's right.
When he went to Ohio State.
Yeah,
so,
we thought that was crazy, didn't we, Shane?
Yeah, so now he's back playing against the team he signed with out of high school. Barone says on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing, it's going to be one of the coldest Orange Bowls in a long time, about 49 degrees there. Let me tell you something. I'm sure the Notre Dame folks and the Penn State folks, they'll be fine with 49 degrees. Yeah. They'll probably be at the beach.
Really? That'd be balmy for them, won't it, Shane?
No doubt. Brent, man, being number 1 in the preseason AP poll ain't working out for teams the last 20-something years.
No, it really hasn't. In Georgia, unfortunately for them, they also found that out that whoever is preseason number 1, I mean, it's been it really and obviously things can get very different very quick with that. But 19 times in the last 20 years, whoever was preseason number 1 did not win the title. And as a matter of fact, kind of in an oddity here, in the playoffs, none of the Final Four won a conference title. None of the Final Four had a first-round bye either. So the playoffs have been interesting along that line.
Yeah, I do think that's interesting that none of these teams, as you just mentioned, won a conference title. Obviously, Notre Dame doesn't play in one.
Right.
But pretty interesting for sure. The Pouncey twins, Mike and Marquise, invite you to try the mango martinis at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, handcrafted with their JF Layton liqueurs. Try those flavors or find your favorite at shopjfhaydens.com. And we will have the Pounceys on in a couple of weeks on the program as well. We're on the Titan No More hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. Brent, I saw this stat I saw about Texas's defense. They've only given up 350 yards. The only teams that have put up more than 350 yards were Arizona State and Clemson. They never gave it up in the SEC.
They don't get enough credit defensively. And remember, they had the Sweat kid last year. He went to the NFL. They had Bo Davis, the best defensive line coach in the nation, that went to LSU. And they're still one of the better defenses anywhere. They're 3rd nationally in total defense. They're only giving up 14 points a game, 111 yards on the ground per game. But yeah, that's frankly quite a stat in this day and age where you give up a lot of yards, but maybe not a lot of points. They don't give up a lot of yards either. So that's right. It's only 2 teams over 350 yards.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think this, whenever you send me these stats on the portal over the last few years of, how many kids went into the portal or how many kids are still with the team they signed with out of high school, it's just staggering to me.
It is. It is. 50% of the top 100 recruits in 2022 and 2023 have changed schools. Shane, that's half of them. That NIL started in 2021. The portal's a little older than that, but for the 22-23 recruiting classes, there were 122 recruits that were labeled as around top 100 guys. Obviously, that goes past 100, but anyway, 61 out of 122 are no longer with the school they signed with out of high school. Which, yes, that's amazing. And what that tells you is, particularly these 4- and 5-star kids, patience is no longer a virtue, is it, Shane? If they're not playing after their first year, they're looking to go on to greener pastures, and that has affected the SEC incredibly. Frankly, I know Kirby Smart's made mention of this before, but you're right about that. That is staggering how many guys are not with the original school they signed with.
Well, not only are they not patient, but they're also looking to see who will offer them more money.
Absolutely.
That's the whole. I talked to 2 coaches yesterday in college athletics, and they're like, this is just getting way out of control.
It is.
The amount of money. And, I argue with friends of mine that say it's just like the NFL. It is not even close to the NFL. The NFL has rules.
Yes.
And you have contracts. Yes. And you can't play for the Chicago Bears this year and say, you know what? I'm going to go play for the Dolphins next year. No, you're
Really?
under contract, people.
That's right.
So it's absolutely out of control, and something needs to happen quickly.
Yes.
Brent, let's jump through the SEC. Obviously, Alabama, people missed it. Jalen Milroe's going pro. They've lost a ton I don't know how many of their guys are starters or what have you. They've lost a ton of kids in the portal.
They have, and they've got a ton coming back. And that's really only happened over the last few days. Their starting center, Parker Brailsford, is coming back. Jam Miller, the running back, LT Overton, the defensive lineman, Jeremy Bernard, their leading wide receiver, is coming back. So they will be better, I think, than people realize with returning players. I mean, to Shane's point, he's right. They've lost their share also, but particularly on defense, a lot of these guys are returning. They've had a couple of transfers. Ball State transfer, he's an offensive lineman. Arkel Anugwam, 6'6", 325. He's from Nigeria, so he is transferring to Alabama. Louisiana transfer Draylen Washington, running back, is doing the same thing. There is a Ryan Grubb watch. Ryan Grubb was the offensive coordinator at Washington with Kalen DeBoer. He was fired from the Seahawks on Monday. So there are a lot of Alabama fans curious if he might come back and be the offensive coordinator. So Alabama's like everybody else, Shane. They have them coming and going.
Yes, they do. The Gators obviously got good news with Tyreek Sapp, saying he's coming back for another year. What else can you tell us about the Gators?
Thought that was important. Look, they've done a good job in filling their needs. And again, the transfer portal is like recruiting. Did you fill your needs? If you've got positions where you need some guys to come in, that's what you need to do. Florida did that at wide receiver with Sturdivant, Michael Sturdivant, who's coming in from UCLA, 6'3", 205. They also picked up Deshaun Purdy at quarterback from Charlotte. Look, we know who the quarterback's going to be in Lagway, but you've got to have a full quarterback room too many injuries along that line. They did get an edge rusher, Coffee Asara. I may be mispronouncing that, but that's okay. And I saw a breakdown, and you probably would have this more accurate, but 37 freshmen, 17 sophomores, 12 juniors, and 18 seniors. That's decent balanced across the line. But again, as you and I talked a few months ago, Florida's strength is in a lot of their youngsters. So with 37 freshmen and 17 sophomores, that is certainly the case.
Yes, indeed. A couple of people talking about how these kids have poor insight into life outside of football. The only thing I will just tell you, the only thing on these college athletes' mind is how much money can I make?
That's right.
And can I get to the NFL? Well, there's only about 1% that are going to get to the NFL. But You're exactly right. Reality will hit them in the face because you're not going to have free food. You're not going to have a free place to live. You're not going to be getting free cars and all that kind of stuff. So it is, it's nuts. The Georgia Bulldogs, obviously, ended the season in disappointment. Basically, that whole game switched in about 40 seconds there at the end of the half and the kickoff return. What's going on up in Athens?
Yeah, they've had several things that are going on real quick. Dylan Bell, the wide receiver, he is coming back. Texas A&M wide receiver Noah Thomas is leaving Aggie land and coming to Georgia. Georgia also got a commitment, as your listeners know, from Adrian Maddox from UAB. Jaden Harris from Miami, a defensive back, is transferring to Georgia. Christian Miller, their defensive lineman, is coming back. Kick returner, wide receiver Anthony Evans is going into the portal. Damon Wilson, one of their better edge guys, is going into the portal. Probably to see what he can do. Also, they got a couple of brothers, Zachariah Branch and Zion Branch, wide receiver and a safety from USC. Also, Shane, one of the more interesting things, I'll be brief about this. Georgia in the first half, and we talked about this as a problem the whole year, was they couldn't score. And in the first 7 games, Georgia scored 136 points in the second half, but in the first half, they scored 6 against Clemson, 3 against Kentucky, 6 against Florida, 7 against Alabama, 7 against Ole Miss, 0 against Georgia Tech, 3 against Texas, and 3 against Notre Dame. But look, I'm sure you've seen that before over the years in different teams. But Shane, for whatever reason, Georgia really struggled to score in the first half.
Yeah, they really have. There's no question about that. Ole Miss, they're doing their thing, what they do year in and year out in the portal.
And they will continue to do that. West Virginia wide receiver Traylon Ray made a commitment last night, so he is going with Ole Miss. This won't surprise you, but Ole Miss broke records this year offensively. It was their second highest yardage total since 2000 or in 2015. 7th time since 2000. They've gone over the 6,000 yard mark in a season. Jackson Dart was one of the guys who really did that. Chad Kelly was one of the record setters years ago. Ole Miss ended last year number 3 in scoring offense, number 2 in passing offense, number 2 in total offense. So, Shane, no surprise to you. I know the Rebels have done a really good job gathering offensive talent. I thought where Lane really did well was on the defensive side of the ball, but they've got another big haul coming in this year too. So Ole Miss is on a real roll right now.
Yeah. On Facebook Live, brought to you by Mel Law, and he says, "Does Gator Made have any impact on helping keep players, or is that just no? The Gatorade does a tremendous job, but the bottom line is still it doesn't matter how many more resources the kids have, how much you're trying to educate them on life after football. All they think about is what's happening right now.
Yes.
And it's crazy. Brent, somebody had a question here. They wanted to know. It was someone on YouTube. I can't find it right now. Brought to you by Quality Plumbing. They asked if Hugh Freeze found a quarterback. I believe the so-called reports after recruiting and all the transfer portal that his quarterback room was the highest rated quarterback room from all the recruiting analysts, I guess. I don't know if that's true or not, but are you familiar with the kids that he got out of the portal?
Well, Peyton Thorne will not be the guy as he has been. They've done a really nice job as far as bringing guys in, and that's something that they simply had to be able to do all the way around. They got the Oklahoma quarterback transferred.
Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, Jackson Arnold came in. Tanner Bailey, who was, I believe he was at one time at South Carolina, and he retired for whatever that means. He is unretired, and he has joined Auburn now as another quarterback. The guy they really like is Deuce Knight. He'll be a true freshman. He was committed to Notre Dame. Then he came to Auburn. With all those accolades, that's basically why that Auburn is kind of started over at quarterback and why they're rated so high.
Yeah, I think the Deuce kid he was the player of the year in the state of Mississippi. I think everybody they thought Ole Miss thought they were going to get him last minute, but I'm sure Auburn had multiple bags sitting on his front porch. Florida State signed a wide receiver. Tennessee
sure
Vol.
did. Squirrel White ended up at Florida State. Squirrel White is really a good receiver. He's 5'10". He's a slot receiver. The problem is he has trouble staying healthy. We understand that. And sophomore, he had 67 catches. Last year, he was in and out, and as far as being hurt, so that hurt them. Florida State also got Elijah Herring, a Memphis transfer too. So they're trying to stock up a little bit. Shane, if Missouri, if I may mention this real quick, Nate Noel, their leading rusher, is headed to the NFL draft. He did a nice job, and Missouri did a nice job. Double-digit wins. Brady Cook, obviously, being their quarterback. Luther Burden is going to be a star in the NFL, without a doubt. But Nate Noel heading to the NFL.
Yeah, the Miami Hurricanes, they're losing a lot of players, but boy, they're bringing in a bunch. Yeah,
they really are. They've done a lot of additions. David Blay, a defensive tackle from Louisiana Tech. C.J. Daniels, a wide receiver from LSU. Charles Brantley is a cornerback from Michigan State. Emmanuel Carnjay from Arizona is coming in too. James Brockemeyer, the offensive lineman, he was, and you know this family, he was in Alabama, went to TCU. He is now at Miami, and Shane, I'm hoping that's pretty good family. I'm hoping that works out for him.
Yeah, it's a very well-off, great family. But the money that's being thrown at these kids, it's like you can't turn it down.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's going on there. It just cracks me up. Florida Victorious, proud NIL partner of the Florida Gators, joined today to help make Florida victorious. A few more minutes with Brent Beaird. We'll get to Graham Hall after the break. Brent, we got a text here on the Titan MR text line. I think this is somewhat interesting conversation. We probably don't have enough time, but this is great to throw out to all our listeners around the world. This is Bobby in Louisville, Kentucky on the Titan MR text line says, I'd like to know y'all's thoughts. If you had to choose one school in the SEC with the head football coach and head basketball coach combination, what school would you take?
Well, you could say Alabama if Kalen DeBoer it starts to improve.
You know who I just thought about who I would probably say out of the 16 teams right now today?
Tennessee.
Either Tennessee or Ole Miss.
Yes. Yeah. Look, Chris Beard, no relation,
coach,
is an incredible basketball coach for Ole Miss. Shane, the problem with Ole Miss is he just so happens to be in the best conference in the nation right now in basketball.
Yeah, but I mean, with the success that Lane had this year, Ole Miss won last night in Bud Walton Arena, beat Calipari and the Hogs. Obviously, Rick Barnes has a great squad, even though they got clobbered by the Gators. It was a tremendous performance by Florida, but those happen. But Tennessee had a good year in football, making the playoffs. So I would probably lean to those two right now. I mean, I'm sure it's a good conversation. That's one of those you have during the summertime when nothing's going on, right?
Yeah. Well, and listen, if A&M can ever do anything in football, I love Buzz Williams. As a basketball coach, he is top notch. But that's a wonderful question, by the way. And this is great. You could talk about that for half the show.
Yeah, for sure. Brent, give us a few nuggets before we get you out of here.
Yep, be glad to do that. Going back to Tennessee, Mike Matthews, our wide receiver, has decided to stay. Boo Carter, who had a really good freshman campaign, he decided to stay too. Shane, you remember our friend Robbie Ashford? He was at Auburn, then he went to South Carolina, and now he's committed to Wake Forest. How about that?
Jeez. He's been everywhere.
Yeah, it really is. Oklahoma has a commitment from Florida State defensive end Marvin Jones Jr. So we will see how that goes for him. And Shane, I put this in the notes, and I know your listeners understand this, but just to track Jaden Rashada, committed to Miami, flips to Florida, decommits from Florida, commits and signs with Arizona State, transfers to Georgia, and now he's back in the portal. Needless to say, Jaden is struggling and not getting very good advice.
Yeah, it's I'm right there with you. So, Brent, good stuff as always, my friend. We got a lot to cover. We'll talk more next week. We'll know who's playing for the national title. The next two nights should be fun to watch. And stay warm there, my friend. Yep, I will do that. And remember now, less than 150 days until Phil Steele's magazine goes to press, okay? That's Brent Beaird, a college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter, joining us on the Titan & More Hotline. We're going to take a quick time out. We'll come back. We'll have Graham Hall from 24/7 Sports talk a little Gator football recruiting, the roster management, all that good stuff. Also a little basketball. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the International Diamond Center Studios. We'll be right back.
Our premium sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Crime Prevention Security System, Titan MRI, Meldon Law, QC Kinetics, Dave & Buster's, UF Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute, JF Hayden Craft Liqueurs, Bishop's Pitmaster Barbecue, Florida Cracker Kitchen, Los Linderos Tequila. Gridiron sponsors are Baker Sporting Goods, Cogent Bank, Comfort Temp, Electronics World, Florida Victorious, Gallo Car Wash, Miapa Latin Cafe, Peachland Dental, Quality Plumbing, Ruse Ogre State Farm, Silverback Concrete, 84 Lumber, Big Mills Cheesesteak, Celebrate Primary Care, Dowling Signs, Gator Bait Media, Gator Dominoes, Ironwood Golf Course, Okido America, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, UF Bookstores, Nest and Wow, MG&A Wealth Management. Watch and listen to us live on Facebook and YouTube. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. To become a sponsor, call my man Freddie at 352-284-3733.
Unleash the Inferno.
The most important thing I learned from my father was work ethic and integrity. Never veer away from integrity, even if it costs you money.
International Diamond Center owner Keith LeClaire.
The core value for IDC is to protect the customer.
That means offering the largest selection, uncompromising quality, the strongest warranties, and honest guidance from experts who are not paid on commission. International Diamond Center at Celebration Point. Online, shopidc.com.
Welcome back to the International Diamond Center studios. It is PodUp with Matthews in the morning on a Thursday edition. Make sure you go by International Diamond Center. Check out all their jewelry, watches, and you'll get a just browsing around. They'll hook you up with a Spurrier's Gridiron Grill gift card. Let's go back to the Titan MR hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp, and it is our man Graham Hall from 24/7 Sports. What's up, my man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, man. Hope all's well with you. Hope you had a great holidays.
Same to you, my friend. All right, Graham, let's do this first before we jump into basketball. Let's talk a little football. The biggest question I get on a daily basis on this program via Facebook, YouTube, all the different platforms, our Titan MR text line is Billy Napier hiring an offensive coordinator? And when will it happen? If it happens.
I don't know. I think that, from the coaching staffs I've covered, they've kept all their moves pretty close to, the vest here. And if they do decide to do that, there will have to be some other changes that are going to be made here. And there are a couple of coordinators, who have expiring contracts at the end of January. And that aspect out for them, I think, is something that has been ongoing and is going to continue. There could be a few that have already been finalized here, but their priority has been sorting out that chief of staff role. I know that people refer to it as general manager, but it's more of kind of like a front office executive role. They've been interviewing candidates for really back to November. They had a handful of candidates interview via Zoom. Then they met with 4 candidates last week. They also met with a 5th on Saturday, Jim Nagy, who is the executive director of the Senior Bowl. He had a second interview with Florida. So I think that's the priority for them right now, just knowing that, figuring out the agent relationships, having people who can balance this quote-unquote cap that is going to be implemented pretty soon here when revenue sharing takes hold and changes the game in April. But to answer your question, I know I've rambled a little bit. If I had to put some money on it, I would say that Florida does not hire a true offensive coordinator to take the onus of the play calling duties away from Billy Napier. Now, they could add to their offensive coaching staff, and as Billy said last year, it's a collaborative process between him and Russ Callaway and Rob Sale being involved in that as well, Jabbar Jalouk, of course. And I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in someone else to be involved in that process. But someone taking the offensive coordinator duties from Billy Napier, I don't expect that to happen. Not saying it couldn't happen. I've obviously been wrong before. You got to be okay with being wrong in this business. But the same mentality exists, I think, right now that existed last year when Billy chose not to give up offensive coordinator play calling duties. He had a quarterback coming back for the first time in Graham Mertz, and he thought the continuity between him and in-helmet communication that really changed the game this past season was not in the best interest of Florida's offense. And I think the same thing can be said about calling plays for DJ Lagway, because this is a guy who has become accustomed to hearing it from the head coach, and giving him a new voice in his ear is probably not the move that they're going to look to make. I know that's a little bit disappointing to people out there, but that's just what my gut tells me right now. But we're going to know a lot more here in the next, 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, we're getting some questions on YouTube and the Titan MR text line and stuff about Rand Carthon from like that general manager's chief of staff job. Any chance they interview him?
I think there's a chance. I just think that someone who most recently was a NFL GM, and I think you look at the narrative out there, he got a tough shake in Tennessee, right? I mean, what were they supposed to do? I mean, they fired Vrabel, and now he's a hot commodity. You know, they have a chance. They're getting the number one pick. They have a chance to, add a generational talent potentially. And it doesn't fall on his shoulders there. I think that the moves that he made, maybe, you question letting Derrick Henry go, but what were they supposed to do? This is, he got the short end of the stick here. I don't know if he wants to go back to the college level right now, even if it's, his alma mater, knowing that he's going to be someone that if he continues to stick around the NFL, I think he'll get another chance as an NFL GM, just given the narrative that's out there about him and kind of the shake that he got. I would be surprised, but I can't say it's impossible. I know that Florida probably would like to find some stability at that chief of staff role. Just, you had Mark Robinson in the role for 8 months. He goes to Georgia here. Maybe you want to have someone that is going to be here for at least a year or two. And I think for Carthon, the chances that the NFL comes calling may it could happen. I think that they're a little bit farther along in the interview process, that new candidates popping up right now would be a little bit surprising to me, but certainly it would be an intriguing name, and you'd have someone who would be personally motivated to do the role given his ties to Florida, of course.
There are many car washes in Gainesville, but only one Gallo car wash, locally owned by UF alum, and the only car wash that provides NIL opportunities to the Gator athletes, with locations on Northwest 13th Street and Southwest Williston Road, and coming soon to Jonesville. We got Graham Hall here, does a phenomenal job covering the Gators. Text here on the Titan MR text line from Larry. He wants to know, Graham, what happened with the safety that he committed to us from UAB and then 2 days later switched to Georgia?
Well, I think certainly was torn between Florida and Georgia. Georgia thought that they were going to land him initially before he kind of surprised them and committed to Florida. I will say, if you noticed, when he committed, Billy Napier didn't tweet out the signature, sunglass emoji. They never announced him as signed. So obviously some stuff behind the scenes was still, maybe he was using, I'm just speculating here, of course, maybe he was using a commitment to Florida to get some additional incentive from Georgia's side to bring him into the fold. That's something that we hear about all the time. So, I think it's a tough blow in a sense, because you look at guys in the portal out there, people who were looking at Maddox, were really interested in his skill set coming over from UAB. He has some positional flexibility, and I think for Florida, not only do they need to add some depth at safety, but they're going to need to add some depth at star, and his ability to potentially play that position made him coveted by Florida's coaching staff. Sharif Denson underwent a minor procedure after the season ended. Aaron Gates is out for an extended period of time after getting injured on the second play of the game against Ole Miss. So I would be surprised if they weren't still looking to get someone there in the third level that can provide some experience. It just won't be Maddox.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears. Obviously, you were in the O'Connell Center Tuesday night, just demolishing the Tennessee Vols. Never would have thought that happened, but boy, they give the Gators credit. It was, in this league, you start the season 0-2. It doesn't mean you're out of it, but boy, there's just so many good teams that come out of a hole. So it was crucial for the Gators to win. I wouldn't say they played their best game ever, because we didn't shoot the ball that great. Walter Clayton only had, 6 points, but it was just a great team win, just in dominating fashion.
Yeah, I think it kind of epitomizes how difficult it's going to be to win on the road this season in SEC play. I mean, you look at all those teams in the top 75 of the net rankings, home court advantage is extremely significant in college basketball. You're going to see a lot of teams that are really, really good go on the road and lose to teams that are considered to be inferior. I mean, look at Kentucky going to Georgia, a Georgia team that is a lot better than I think a lot of people expected, has a lottery pick in my mind, and Asa Newell. That's a tough place to go, no matter who you are. And I think Florida has experienced that too. Obviously, going to Kentucky, they didn't have a bad game whatsoever at Kentucky, but you go on the road in this league, it's going to be really, really difficult. Even during winter break, where we were questioning what the environment would be like. I know that people have seen some of that, controversy out there about the student section. That place was rocking on Tuesday night. You got to give them a lot of credit for filling that place with more than 11,000 people. The students brought the energy from, their student section all the way up to the nosebleeds, unfortunately. Tennessee just didn't shoot the ball very well. That's going to happen to you at some point or the other. If you think that your team's going to not go cold on any given night, I got some lakefront property in Iowa to sell you. That's going to happen to every single team out there. You're going to have tough shooting nights. Florida had like you said, not a great one, but this is a Tennessee team that entered the game ranked number 2 nationally in scoring defense. They were allowing just 55.9 points per game on average, second just to Houston. They were great in 3-point percentage defense allowed. They ranked number 1 in the country coming into that game and defending the 3-point line or allowing the team to make other shots. And Florida, like you said, didn't shoot it particularly well. They left a lot of points out there. But what they did most importantly was play consistent defense and won the rebounding battle by a significant margin, had 17 more rebounds than the Volunteers. I know so much of the headlines have been about Elijah Martin and Walter Clayton and Will Richard, but Alex Condon and Ruben Chiniello were fantastic, combining for 27 boards, 4th double-double of Alex Condon's career. When that front court is on and giving you second chance opportunities and affecting shots, this is a really, really tough Florida team to beat, especially at home, as we've seen that they've won the last 16 home games here in Gainesville. So always feels good for a fan to get a win over a rival, especially if they're the number 1 team in the country. But to do it by 30 points, I don't think anyone expected that. Todd Golden would be lying if he told you that he expected that they would win by 30 points. He thought they would win, and so did Vegas, of course. But I think that to win by that much against the number 1 ranked team, a lot of that is a credence to how good your team is, but also it just shows that Tennessee had an off night. Maybe they got a little bit complacent having won 14 games in a row. Rick Barnes after the game was pretty adamant that this is going to be good for this Tennessee team. They maybe needed to assess their flaws a little bit better, be humbled a little bit after everyone was telling them how good they were. So they'll meet again here in 3 weeks in Knoxville. I'm looking forward to that. At least Florida and Tennessee get to play twice during the regular season. It's a true shame that Florida and Kentucky only played once in the regular season, and you got to hope that they meet in the SEC tournament.
Yeah, and the Gators go to Arkansas Saturday, where Arkansas sits at 0-2 in the league, lost last night on their home court to Ole Miss. They're going to be a desperate basketball team. I've never been a fan of Calipari from a coaching standpoint. We know he can recruit, but we've had a couple of people chime in here about, Arkansas stinks. We're going to win by 20. I hope, but anything can happen on the road, especially at Bud Walton Arena.
Yeah, you looked at that game last night that they played against Ole Miss. I mean, this is why I gave Florida fans credit. Arkansas is on winter break as well, and that arena was not packed whatsoever at Bud Walton Arena. And obviously, 2 teams in a little bit different directions here. Arkansas is not a top 10 ranked team. They weren't playing the number 1 team in the country. They were playing Ole Miss, but they still failed to protect their home court. They lost by 9 or 10 or 11, something like that last night. And, they're obviously a little bit demoralized, but you can't, like you just said, you can't take any team for granted in this league. South Carolina, LSU, Missouri, Texas, arguably the 4 bottom teams in the SEC, they can beat you on any given day if they get hot, if you get complacent, thinking that you're just going to waltz into another team's arena and get a victory. That's just not going to happen here in this league. There's too much talent. Coaching is too good. There's too much good film on teams. This is going to be an absolute battle. You can't take John Calipari lightly whatsoever. But if Florida can go out there and get a road victory against Arkansas, I don't care if Arkansas is 0-2. That's a quadrant 1 victory. That's at least going to be a quadrant 2 victory. And while we're not certainly worried about Florida's chances right now, knock on wood, of making the NCAA tournament, that resume will certainly get a boost with getting a Q1 or Q2 opportunity. So another Saturday at 4 p.m. up there in Fayetteville. You got to hope that Florida doesn't suffer a drop-off thinking that, they beat the number 1 team in the country and they can give 70% effort. I don't expect that to happen because this team has said repeatedly that they're not going to be satisfied with anything they do between now and March. And that's the right mentality to have for a team that has postseason goals. But it certainly is something that you got to watch. I hate to use the cliche trap game because there shouldn't be a trap game in the SEC whatsoever. But when you beat the number one team by 30, I think it's fair to wonder at least a little bit whether they're going to suffer any form of drop off whatsoever. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's going to be something to watch for sure.
Yeah, Dan says on Facebook Live the weather will be bad Saturday in Fayetteville. It'll be interesting to see how full Bud Walton Arena will be. Graham, last question for you. Mike on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellon Law. He wants to know what's the real reason Coach Boone didn't get on with the Gators. Muschamp.
Well, I've heard this for a couple of weeks here. It was really floated more by Will Muschamp's camp. His son was at Georgia for a while and no longer is at Georgia. And when he no longer had that family tie to the Georgia program, I think he realized that he was a little bit more rejuvenated and ready to get back into coaching. And I think he still is. I think he will end up taking an assistant coordinator job, if not this season, definitely next season. But for Florida, I just don't think that they were ever really looking at him as a realistic candidate. They've been evaluating this position for a month now, and when he was floating his interest there, I think that they've already kind of narrowed their pool of candidates a little bit, where that just didn't seem like it was going to work out here. I hate to use the term distraction whatsoever, but it was well documented that Will Muschamp wasn't a huge fan of Gainesville when he was here. And you bring in a former head coach to lead a role like that. Is that going to be a distraction that you're going to want to have? I'm not saying that Will Muschamp is in any way, but from a narrative standpoint and just his ties to the University of Florida, I could see maybe why they wanted someone who maybe a little bit younger, is more hungry to rise up the ranks rather than, okay, it's about time for me to get back into this thing. I do think that, and here's one that I think would be interesting to watch. I get more of the belief that there's going to be a defensive opening at Tennessee. And given that Muschamp's son is now at Vanderbilt, I think the proximity to family would make sense for him to vie for a Tennessee job. And I wouldn't be surprised, I'm just speculating here, if he was maybe using the push of, hey, you have a chance to snatch me up if you want me before I take another role at a team you're going to face regularly in the SEC. So that's just from what I've heard and some of the speculation I've heard. It would have been a really interesting name whatsoever, but all of the interest being floated for that job was mainly from Muschamp's side, using some of the contacts that he's had in Gainesville. He was pushing that, and it was never really something that Florida was seriously considering.
Yeah, gotcha. I don't want to face him, though, quite honestly. His son was a walk-on. His oldest son was a walk-on at Georgia. He's no longer there. His youngest son is at Vanderbilt. Is his other son playing anywhere that you're aware of? Did he go to a smaller school?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm going to look it up right after we get off here, and I'll let you know for sure. But not that I'm aware of. I think that, him being out of coaching, even though he's been, working with the Georgia defense in that co-role for a couple of years now, was a senior analyst, in 2021. The guy seems to be hungry again. He's still young, a great defensive mind here. And I do think, like I said, that he'll land somewhere in the SEC. I would actually be surprised if he doesn't land somewhere this year. If not this year, it's going to be next year in my mind. But a chance to watch his kids play college football and be nearby is, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I hope that he savors all the moments that he can get with that, because a lot of people out there would certainly kill for that opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, before we get you out of here, portal is closed, except for the teams I think that are still playing. I'm sure some kids on these 4 teams playing tonight and tomorrow, they'll go into the transfer portal. Are there any chances of the Gators, or what are the rules right now? Who all can they sign right now, Graham, if they'd sign anybody at all?
Yeah, I still expect them to maybe add 1, potentially 2 players. You look at Florida's scholarship numbers, right? We have a scholarship chart at Swamp 247 that you can check out. It says 80 on there, but realistically, it's 83, right? Because that doesn't reflect that Cormani McLean, Jason Zandamela, and Caleb Relos have all been added to scholarship. So you're talking maybe 1-2 spots. You always want to maybe save a spot before, the April window opens up here. Maybe put a walk-on on scholarship, just knowing how valuable that still is. But they're going to be selective here. I do think there's some positions of need. Another tackle in the portal, even though you feel good about your young guys on the roster. Like I mentioned, if you can get a safety, someone who can play star, I think that would be wise for Florida, just knowing how much they rotate there, especially at the star position. Otherwise, I think that they're going to be a little bit selective here. Now, if someone who's got a lot of talent and isn't, looking for $1 million enters the portal here in a couple of weeks, I expect Florida to, kick the tires on that because it would make sense for them. But they're also still pursuing some, high school prospect, in onus. So maybe you're talking one player from the portal here. So, but also with the portal, you also have a chance to add players and have them be a preferred walk-on and through Florida Victorious, make it so that they're not worried about paying their way for scholarship. Let me put it that way. So I think that Florida's going to be selective. We're going to have to see who enters the portal here, but I don't expect them to be completely finished here with adding talent to the roster here. It's just, there's not going to be too many, spots available here in the next couple of weeks.
Good stuff as always, my friend. Let them know how they can follow you on Twitter or X or whatever it's called. And y'all got any specials going on right now to follow your work?
Yeah, I believe we're running a 50% off promo right now. You can take advantage of that at Swamp 247. After the first year, if you resubscribe, you get Paramount Plus for free with that deal. That's a $90 a year value. So you think about what you're getting for the subscription, a lot of bang for the buck compared to some of the other places out there. If you have any questions, reach out to me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Graham Hall. And I'm looking forward to being back pretty soon, talking all things Gators with you. We're about to get into a very busy season. Baseball, gymnastics, you name it. It's all going to be happening here in Gainesville. Hope all's well with you, Shane, and everyone out there.
That's Graham Hall, one of the best in the business. Join us on the Titan More hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. Appreciate it, Graham. Take care, bud.
My pleasure always. Y'all take care.
Yeah. This Day in Sports brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life at Campus USA Credit Union. 2017 at Raymond James Stadium, the Clemson Tigers beat the number one team, the Alabama Crimson Tide, 35-31. That was one of the very few national championship games that were close and competitive. So we'll see how it goes tonight. You got the Irish Nittany Lions, and then tomorrow, Longhorns and Buckeyes, and we'll recap it all. Have a great day, folks. Appreciate you joining in. See you tomorrow. Take care.